Well, hello. I think I'll put my my speaker on in a minute in case anybody wants to join me. You can indicate that, of course, in a comment or something, and I think I can invite you. Anyway, welcome to another little chat with me about all sorts of things to do with spiritualism and its practices. Very dear to my heart and dear to many thousands and, dare I say, millions of people. Now, apart from all the misconceptions that fly around, and we will ignore those for the purposes of our talks together, because, I leave negativity where it's meant to be, which is outside of ourselves. And I thought I would talk about mediums and healers, people that I've known myself, and very happy to have been able to be in their company. People like Irene Souter, who I mentioned in my previous chat, and I don't think I mentioned Doris Collins. And Doris was a great friend. She was a lovely lady, and she used to give demonstrations, not just of mediumship, but also of healing. And in the style, I would say, really of Harry Edwards, the famous healer, who used to pack halls wherever he did public demonstrations of healing. But in fact, I heard it said not that many years ago that were he to apply to be a healer now under the auspices of the Spiritualist National Union with their rules and regulations, that he would have been refused. So that's another discussion, isn't it? What constitutes healing and a healer? Harry Edwards, of course, was a hands-on healer, very much so, and he actually used to manipulate in some ways. His spirit guides would actually give healing to people, but it would be perhaps quite vigorous. And for those of us who are not used to that kind of that style of healing, it makes us sort of shrink a little bit. Certainly, I'm not in favour of that kind of rather tough kind of healing, because apart from anything else, I know, as many of us do, that when we deliver healing from spirit, those wonderful, highly evolved entities in the world of spirit, who, when we attune ourselves to them, are able to work and channel through those healing energies through us, they can perform all sorts of miraculous things that we couldn't possibly accomplish. And any amount of person handling doesn't actually influence that outcome. So now Doris Collins, as I mentioned, she was a great medium and a great healer, but she was more in the style of Harry Edwards. So she would call people onto the stage, and she would wrestle with them a bit, is what I would call it, which is not what we do. In fact, there's a great dichotomy between healing practices, depending on what organisation you actually belong to or what church under which you might practice your healing. And when I learned to develop my healing abilities under Bert French, who was then the president of Lewisham Spiritualist Church, we were actually told to sort of place our hands gently on the patient, on the person who required healing. Of course, these people were fully clothed. They would come into the hall and wait, just like you would in a doctor's waiting room or a therapist's waiting room, and then come forward quietly when you were finished with your patient. And there were about 8 of us in the hall, and people could choose which healer they would go to. And what we would do, of course, would be to attune ourselves to that person and spirit by placing our hands on their shoulders first of all. But then after that, we would actually go, as we say, put our hands where we were prompted to, so that the healing rays would be channeled through to that particular part of the body. Now that meant that we had little stools as well, so we would sort of be on these little stools, low stools, so that we could put our hands on people's hips, their knees, you know, go around the front of their feet, you know, things like that. And I still actually favour that kind of healing because it's so beneficial. The other thing about that kind of healing is that sometimes, you know, when we are sick, if we are, shall we say, not in any kind of relationship where we would be touched, or if we have no close relationships with anyone so that we can get a cuddle or a touch, and touch is so important for human beings. Of course it is for animals, but we'll keep that separate. That sometimes that they used to come once a week to Lewisham, for instance, and perhaps that touch of a human hand as well, kindly touched, would be the only human touch that they would have received for that whole week. And that in itself is healing, isn't it? So I'm very much in favour of that kind of healing. Whereas there are organisations that, for instance, you know, the Spiritualist National Union as well, that have healing guidelines and so on, and their healers are not expected to move any further than the actual shoulders. And of course, the other thing is that you can heal through the aura, and all human beings have an aura. We mentioned about the etheric duplicate of ourselves. Well, that's within our, that's what our body is framed on. But outside of our body, we have this energy capsule, if you like, that mimics around our body, and that also has a spirit equivalent. It's physical energy. It also has a spirit equivalent called an aura, and we can actually work as healers because we're linked into the world of spirit. When we're doing this, we can actually heal through that aura, so you don't actually have to touch somebody's body at all. And there are times, of course, when that is appropriate, because if people are in great pain, for instance, they don't need to be touched. You know, if any of you have experienced that sort of pain, you will understand what I'm saying there. So yes, so that's Doris Collins taken care of, and of course I couldn't not mention Harry Edwards. Doris Collins and Doris Stokes used to be the target of media controversy that was stirred up, saying that Doris Stokes and Doris Collins hated each other, which is absolutely not true. They lived in very different styles, both of them. They were two very different women and two very different mediums. And they certainly didn't have any animosity between them, because there wasn't that relationship. Doris Collins was her own kind of person, and Doris Stokes, of course, was her own kind of person. Both of them were happily married and lived in good in a good place with their partners, and they certainly did not have a go at each other at all. That was just something that I think, you know, some of the tabloids whipped up. But I mean, in actual fact, I think, you know, it's amazing that, I mean, nowadays you don't even get any mention of any mediums at all in the mainstream press. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. Perhaps it's a bad thing, because the only time they used to talk about us was to denigrate us. And now the denigration would fall on deaf ears, or incredulous ears, I could say. You know, people don't believe that. rubbish about us anymore, at least that, it's all gone quiet. And Irene, of course, as I mentioned the other day, was also a wonderful animal healer. She and her husband had a house that they dedicated to as a healing sanctuary, and they, of course, were very, very busy all their lives giving healing. And of course, when people give healing because they've developed their abilities, they develop in different ways. And I should mention, I suppose, at this point, that if you want to know more about healing, you could always go onto my website, because there are articles about healing on that. That's www.lynguestiswalk.com, or the New Christian Spiritualist Society website, because that's got stuff about healing too. And of course, in the book that I wrote, the Spiritualist Handbook, and that's got quite a lot about healing in it, and how one can move forward to do that. Basically, healing was always considered to be the highest form of mediumship, because you have to attune yourself to the very highest spirit in order to bring that healing through for the person who is suffering. And coming back to the mediumship part, when I was at Lewisham, the first rule that I learned was that if you're going to give healing to somebody, you do not give them a message from their loved ones at the same time, before, during, or after. Why is that? Well, it's because of the different levels to which we are expected to attain. We get to a certain level of consciousness raising where we hit what we call the astral plane, that plane of spirit existence, which is very close to the earth plane, and that is where people come through, and we can get messages from them. They're recognizable as they were and stuff like that. When you move a bit further up the old scale, you get all these sort of rather more holy figures in robes and things, and you may not even be able to discern their faces, because they're a little bit remote. But what you do know is that you are linked in with those in the world of spirit who can deliver this, wonderful healing to those of us down here who need it. So I didn't know if anybody would want to come on here. I can't see exactly what's happening. I'm just going to go on regardless, and hope for the best, really. So I shall just comments. There's a comments thing. Comments. Oh, apparently you have to click on this little box that says comments, because otherwise you don't see anything. I'm so sorry. Hi. Hello, Lynn. Can I ask you to talk about spirits and dreams? Can we use it? Yeah, okay. Now I can. That says private chat, but I can show that for people. Right, that's the question I've been asked. What an idiot I am, to be sure. Hello, Lynn. Can I ask you to talk about spirits and dreams, please? Can we receive healing from spirit family whilst we are asleep dreaming? Well, it's yes. Yes, we can receive healing while we are asleep. Dreaming is something that we have to do as human beings. We're programmed for our subconscious to allow us to release our fears and anxieties and worries while we sleep. It also replenishes our stock of healing. Come to the Most High, of course, and it's channeled down towards us on the earth plane, and it comes through individuals in spirit, and our family, of course, are almost, if you like to say, our first line of defense. They're the people that we're used to asking for help when we're suffering, when they're here, and so therefore we ask them for help. They want to help us when they're departed from this life and in the world of spirit. So yes, they're our first people who know that we are suffering, and they are the people who even if we don't know to ask, they will ask for help for us from those higher up that chain, if you like, all the way up. So spirits and dreams. Dreams, in fact, as I said, they can be indicative of other eventualities. If you recall your Bible, there are people who discerned dreams, who explained dreams, and they were much sought after, as they still are, in fact, because that you can do that on two levels. You can do it on a psychic, very earthly level, because, good old Freud, whose theories I don't subscribe to, obviously, the psychiatrist maestro, who wrote about our dreams. We know that certain objects in dreams signify certain things, and that's all very physical and earthly. But the spirit kind of dreams, where you dream that you have been visited by a loved one in spirit, they're wonderful, and you should take that as another kind of reality. So I hope that that's helped. That the short answer would have been yes, we can receive healing from a spirit family while we're asleep, and when we're dreaming as well. So there you go. I hope that's helped. And now I shall go to Melanie. Any healers been sued? That's a good one. Well, as we know, because if you've been listening to me at all as well, even if you didn't know before, with the repeal of the Fraudulent Mediums Act, it was decided by just a general concept that spiritualist practitioners, mediums and healers, would be responsible or in some way connected to the trading acts, trade descriptions acts, and so on. Instead of it being a sacred profession or a sacred office, which is what ministry is a sacred office, it was suddenly made to be, something like a trade, which is just nonsense. But however, and as I mentioned in a previous talk, all these organisations and groups that produce healers, that develop healers, also sell them insurance. Now, I have always maintained that any amount of insurance does not cover you if you are a wrongdoer in the eyes of the law. Now, a healer, of course, must not make claims that they can cure anything. They should not diagnose where there is no previous diagnosis either. They should not prescribe. They should not suggest things like stopping taking drugs or to take drugs or anything like that at all. A healer, a spiritual healer, should just be involved with the world of spirit, bringing spirit energies through to heal the spirit within that person who is suffering, that in turn will heal the body. But healing doesn't mean curing. There have been cures, but we're not in the business as spiritual healers, as spiritualist healers, of telling people that we can guarantee them a cure for what ails them. We can tell them that their symptoms will be relieved. We can tell them that their pain will be relieved, because this is the truth. It's the most wonderful comfort, and it can really keep people going. I've seen wonderful things from spiritualist healing. I myself have received wonderful healing, all the way through. It's just been fantastic. Now, as for being sued, the only healers I've heard about are not really healers, or they have laid hands where they shouldn't have, and they've been arrested for that, and jolly good job too. But not many. I think I only know of a couple. They always make the newspapers, but if you look through the newspaper archives, if you Google that, healer sued or something like that, you won't find much at all, thankfully, because especially now, I think over the last 10 years or so, I think people have got the message that healing is what it says, and most healers are very cognizant of the ethics of their calling. And so I can't tell you that, other than people being done for touching people inappropriately, stuff like that, I don't think that any healer has been sued because of anything that's happened to anybody who has received healing there. Malpractice, as long as healers have regard to the ethics of healing, and I can only speak for spiritualist healers, those who are working under the umbrella organisations who call themselves spiritualists, like ourselves, the New Christian Spiritualist Society. Whatever methodology they use, it's always of a spiritual nature, and they have a code of conduct. All organisations and societies have a code of conduct that people are very well aware of. And in fact, where there are sometimes exams, that code of conduct is always a very important part of any certification or examination of healers within any organisation at all, or any church. So I think that people should be quite happy to be able to have a spiritual healing. What I would say to anybody is this: never go on a one-to-one to have spiritual healing anyway. And I would say that to healers themselves and to patients and prospective patients and prospective healers. You don't need to just be on your own in a room with one person with no witnesses. You always need to be with somebody. I had a bad time once. I was very foolish. It was when I was developing, you see, at Lewisham, and I was asked if I would give healing to a lady who knew my sexuality. I didn't think anything of that, and I went round because she said she was feeling blah blah blah. Yes, fine. So I went along, very pleasant. Went into her home, and then I asked her to sit down on a chair, as you do. And just as I was about to put my hands on her, Doris came in. Doris Stokes, my co-operator in spirit. She said to me, "Do not touch. Do not touch." I went, "Oh," because usually, as I said, I'm a Lewisham healer. I was a Lewisham healer then. I'd put my hands on the shoulders first, and then wherever, I was prompted, straight away, "Do not touch. Do not touch." Twice I thought, whoops. And then I thought, well, maybe no, do not touch. I thought, that's it. 3 times is enough for me not to do anything. So I gave her healing through the aura, cup of tea afterwards, and I left. Well, a week later, the same lady was on a bus filled with people coming back from the church, from the circle that I'd taken actually that night. I was not on the bus, but friends of mine were, fortunately, and they heard her talking in a very loud voice, saying that I had actually abused my trust as a healer and made a pass. And needless to say, she didn't get any takers for that story. On top of which, they all, when they got home, they all got in touch back with the church and told our medium secretary and, you know, what was going on and what had been said. And I was told, asked, and I told exactly what. And the lady was told in no uncertain terms that she was not believed, and it would be, you know, she could come to services because our churches are always open to everybody, no matter what or who, but no more circle and no more receiving healing under the auspices of the church or, you know, any church personnel. So there you are, you see. So I have that to personal brush with disaster, to exhort all healers not to fall into that trap of being without a witness, one-to-one healing. No. So there we are. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, and you might have found that quite interesting. So I hope that was okay, Melanie. And you're also saying, would you advise a healer practice alone in practice? Ooh! I think I've answered that one. I think if you're talking about spiritual healing, I can't answer for these therapists, you know, that do all sorts of different stuff. But if you're a spiritualist healer, you don't practice alone. And I think that it just go. Have a look at the code of conduct that I put in the Spiritualist handbook. Or you might find one if you Google it, Spiritualist Healers Code of Conduct. I'm sure they're up on Google. So I hope that is all right. There. I mean, if somebody is practicing their healing on their own at home, don't do it without a third party present, not ever. There. Colour healing. So we're talking there about healing that is not hands-on necessarily. There is colour healing, which is hands-on, which was given to psychic surgeon and healer Ray Brown, and he instituted a system of colour healing, and that took actually 3 healers to effect that colour healing, and that was hands-on colour healing. If you are practicing as an individual in the same way, hands-on, anything hands-on, anyway, you need a second person. In any case, I would say a second person needs to be present. If you are doing distant healing, that's different. You can sit there on your own for hours doing that. But I suggest that, you know, across the board, that healers should protect themselves, and patients should protect themselves by ensuring, if they go to a healer, that there is somebody else with them who is in the same room as them. They do not go unaccompanied. And I'd say to a healer, always make sure that you have somebody there. Yeah. I put your thanks up, Melanie, in case you were not thankful for that. Thank you. And there's some can't post comments to some destinations, learn more. Well, I don't think this is the right time for me to be learning more about why I can't see lots of comments. I did notice the last time, it was actually yesterday, that when I went and looked on my Facebook page, there were loads of comments that I hadn't seen while I was doing this live broadcast. So I don't understand that really, but I hope that, and somebody had asked me something that I said that I was going to answer, and now I've forgotten it amongst it all. Did I write it down anywhere? I don't think I did, but somebody was asking me a question, and I was mortified that I hadn't seen it, so I wasn't able to answer at the time. But you know, healing is absolutely wonderful. And of course, the thing is this: that when you're talking about you know, earthly physicians, doctors and surgeons, you can always ask those that love us in the world of spirit if they will guide the surgeon's hand, guide the knife, guide the physician, guide your doctor, and it always seems to work, which is all I can say. And of course, before you are undergoing any treatments or surgeries or anything, you know, a good prayer plus a talk with those who love you in the world of spirit does the world of good, and they are very helpful, and they will pull you through, and knowing that they're there is also a great comfort to one if one is suffering there. I can say that with absolute conviction myself, having suffered considerably over the last few years, if not longer. And it's just wonderful. So I totally recommend spiritual and spiritualist healing, but as long as it's coming from the right place and it's all done properly there. So mediumship, of course, has got a very big resurgence now, because it's just everywhere on the internet. You know, more and more people are you know, going mad about these live broadcasts and so on. And of course, with this ability to bring people on to speak to them as well, you know, it's fantastic. I mean, I did a service with Littleport Christian Spiritualists the other week, and I actually, when I say that, it was as the medium for the evening, and it was wonderful because people were able to ask and you could see them and stuff like that. It was really amazing. So I don't know what it'll be like actually once this curfew as such is lifted from everybody in the world, whether people are going to be more spiritual, whether they will decide to go to their local spiritualist meeting place, instead of just being content to, or having to be content to sit indoors and watch people on a screen. And now you can watch me having a sip of water. That's something else, you know. If you are doing psychic work, you will see, if people are doing psychic work, you will see that they need copious amounts of water. I've seen whole carafes of water consumed on a public platform during a service by somebody who's supposed to be a medium. But in fact, by glugging so much water, one can only assume that the facts of the matter are that they are mostly using their psychic faculties, because they will drain you of water. Water is such an essential to life, as we know. It's also essential when your psychic faculties are working overtime. You will feel dry. If you're sitting in a church, for instance, and there's somebody, you know, the medium, the serving medium is there on the platform in front of you, and you're in the front row. If you start getting dry yourself, you can bet your boots that they're actually drawing on some of your water. It's just one of those things, because water is a component of ectoplasm, I am told. And ectoplasm is that spiritual substance that is mixed to actually create physical manifestations from the world of spirit. And that has always been a very sort of difficult area for spiritualists to get to grips with, and for spiritualism itself, because the best thing about physical mediumship is that it is not subjective, that it is objective. If you see a table move on its own, or a medium just puts their fingertips on and it zooms off across the room, that is physical mediumship, and that requires ectoplasmic substance, which does require some water. So a physical medium will often need a drink of water after they finish their demonstration. I know about these things because as editor of Psychic News, I often received reports from physical circles, and very wonderful they were too. There was the Noah's Ark Society, which you may not be aware of, was set up to support physical mediumship. And who was the education officer for the Noah's Ark Society? Colin Fry. You see, Colin was a good medium, and he became, as you know, very famous as a medium. A mental medium, as we call them, mental medium, rather than the physical mediumship that he actually developed. And he was a very, very fine trance medium. And trance is another aspect of physical mediumship. That means that the person's personality, the medium's personality, is subdued. It's sort of almost sort of put to one side, and the personality, the persona of the control of the spirit person actually almost sort of takes over and is able to relay information directly through the mouthpiece of the medium. And Colin Fry was a wonderful exponent of that. And as I say, he was actually the education officer for the Noah's Ark Society for a long time, and this was not commonly known when he was doing his television work. And of course, the reason that he was doing the television work was because when I was editor of Psychic News, I got a phone call from the television company asking me if I could recommend any good-looking young male mediums. So I recommended Colin. Colin at the time was writing a column for me, Psychic News, as a sort of agony aunt, which was rather good. But of course, when he got busy with his television work, he wasn't able to continue. So I took over from him, and you know, instead of it being Dear Colin, it became Dear Lyn. But you know, he was an excellent physical medium. And he suffered somewhat because when he was very young, under the name of Lincoln, he held seances. And one seance, somebody switched the light on, and he was stood there holding a trumpet. Of course, oh dear, that was the end. But the fact is that, you know, trumpets, I have a couple here, are amazing things because spirit operators can use them in proper circumstances and conditions, and you can see trumpets fly around. You can see smoke coming out of trumpets. You can hear voices coming out of trumpets. This all comes under the label of physical mediumship. And that's something that perhaps will make a resurgence, because I suggested to Kathy actually just today when we were talking about mediums and what would I talk about. I never know what I'm going to talk about. And I said to her, perhaps you'd come on camera and we could do something like a table moving, because I'm sure that them upstairs would allow us to do that on camera. So perhaps we will do something like that, and perhaps other people will do that too, because there's nothing quite like table turning to make the old hackles stand up on the back of people's neck and convince them, hopefully, that there is such a thing as another world other than this one. So I suppose you might like to know a little bit about stuff that I've done. Anybody else? Oh, here we are. Someone else. Now let's have a look at what this is. Oh, right, Melanie again. Well, you're my most favourite inquirer. Now, can healing energies be contaminated if the healing is given via YouTube, public video, normal absent healing, by lower energies or whatever? Look, healing, it's the word healing. Like I said, language is really universal. Language is only symbols translated into language. Healing encapsulates lots of different aspects, doesn't it? All of the most high. Nothing is bad at all in the word healing or anything connected with it. So there is no way that spiritual emanations can be contaminated if they are on that vibration, on that frequency of love. And as for YouTube or public video or normal, nothing can happen to that, because this is the actual basis for our prayers and for our request for protection. Because if everything we do is only in the light, is for good and in truth and with love, nothing can get in amongst that is nasty. Not on spirit side. So you see, there is no such thing as that at all. And I often have given prayers on the Facebook page and in recorded videos and things like that, and it just works all the time, because I still love that hymn that says, you know, that it doesn't matter where you are, when you know that there's somebody praying all the time, there's someone saying good things all the time somewhere. Because when we're all asleep, other people the other side of the world are all saying their prayers and all giving healing and all sending out their loving thoughts. So really, you know, if you can imagine, this world is just full of these wonderful loving thoughts, and the nasty thoughts can't get in amongst them. They're outside of that. They're outside of that. And of course, they, you know, people that have nasty thoughts and have nasty intent, they're always going to be around and amongst us, but they can't contaminate us if we don't let them. So I hope that that's been of interest and useful. Now, Karen, yeah, that's true. This is what I was saying. I must have a sip of this. Yes, I'm not seeing the questions that come up on Facebook. It's so aggravating. I'm so pleased that you've come here and you're using this one. I don't know quite how it works, but however, my views on absent healing. Well, I suppose that I know that absent healing works. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel the same to the recipient, because it may be that they are not aware in the same way that if they were sitting in the same room. Kathy's come in with, and that will reverberate.
Just turned it off.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Oh, I see. Kathy's actually brought me in some questions, but I shall carry on with you, Karen. Sorry. My views on absent heat. Thanks, Kathy. If you could, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Now, absent healing, as I said, the recipient isn't necessarily aware of the input of that healing, but would be aware of improvement. Now, sometimes the improvement that is effected is infinitesimal, but it does improve. And what we learn is we have to be patient when it comes to spiritual healing. That we make little progressive steps towards being more healthy. And absent healing, I think, is very good where people are suffering en masse, because you can ask big questions. You can ask big favors of spirit. You can say, please look after this group of people. Picture them in your mind, and see them enveloped in love and beautiful colors, and imagine them being well and everything. And the spirit operators will do their best to actually effect that healing for them. Even though it is what we call absent healing. If it's for individuals, it also works. So I have to say that my view on absent healing is excellent, but I love being near to somebody when giving healing from spirit, because it feels as if it's more immediate. It has a more immediate effect on the patient, but that's just me. But definitely absent healing works, fortunately for all of us, because we're all sending out our absent healing all the time, aren't we? Especially spiritualists, we're all maniacs at absent healing. We do absent healing in every service. That's what we do. So I hope that's helped, Karen. Right, teacher, see what this one is. And of course, I must say that there are people waiting on Facebook for me to answer questions. I should do that. Kathy's just pointed that out to me. Tia Vanderlyn. Hello, Lynn. It was said to me you should take up shamanism for healing, but I don't know. No, I wouldn't know either. Look, I'm a spiritualist healer. I'm a spiritualist minister. I'm a spiritualist medium. I cannot pass a comment really on any other kind of healing. All healing must be good. And shamanism is something that has been practiced, of course, by many indigenous peoples around the world ever since time began. And as has, the stuff that I'm keen on. But I don't see why you shouldn't, but I would recommend that if you're interested in healing, that you look at spiritualist healing and develop your mediumship to such an extent that you can deliver the goods, because it's a wonderful way of life, and it's wonderfully effective in treatment of suffering. So while as I say, I cannot comment on other methods of healing, and I am obviously I am very involved with the spiritual world and less involved with the natural world. So I would just like to just say that, and I think that again, people have to make their own way in life and tread their own pathway. Tread your own pathway. Have a look, see if you like it, see if it suits you, if you're suited to it, things like that. But my recommendation is spiritualist healing. Now, this is yes, if you would, Kathy.
Peter Martin.
Right, hold on. You're into trance healing. That's very good. I think you should stay with that.
Right. Peter Martin says, I keep praying that I can remember my dreams where I have been in my sleeping hour but have remembered.
Right, Peter Martin has posted on a comment on Facebook asking...
I keep praying that I can remember my dreams where I have been sleeping now, but have remembered.
Right. He says that he is praying for help to remember his dreams when he wakes.
He's watching.
And watching as we are now. And I all I can say is that we don't always know what's best for us. I covered something about dreams and dreaming, the dream state, earlier in my chat today for someone. And we need to dream as human beings. It's a physical requirement. And it helps our spirit as well, because we are, it helps our emotions as well, because sometimes we're so anxious and worried in our daily life that these dreams that we have help us to live with the stresses and strains of that daily grind that we have. But sometimes our dreams are uplifting, and of course, what I suggest is, Peter, that you ask your helpers, who are there, of course, in spirit, to help you remember good dreams. If you are not remembering your dreams, you're not meant to remember them. It's a way of perhaps working through anxieties and stresses, and you should just accept that. But if you really want to remember good dreams, then you should ask for that specific, because otherwise I don't think they're going to trouble you with remembrances of things that would actually not be beneficial to your well-being. That's my opinion. Okay, Peter.
Now, Lynn Gale. Afternoon, Lynn. I dreamt about my little Corgi last night, who passed over last Thursday. She was running away from me and I was trying to catch her. Do you know what that means?
Yes, it means that she's having fun. Oh, how lovely. So Lynn, you were visited in the night in your unconscious condition, in your dream state, by your little pet companion who passed only a little while ago, and you saw her running away from you, and wonders if that's significant. Well, I think you could say that is having fun and showing you that she's fine, and just wanted to make herself known to you, and she's running off back to be with her friends over there on the spirit side of life. So I think you should be happy about that. And it's possible, if you think about it, that maybe she would do that sometimes, to run away from you, perhaps when she was down here, when she was younger, perhaps as a bit of fun. So there you are. I would say that was a blessing to you.
Diana Hanks just mentions table moving would probably scare me, maybe not to see it on the screen, but in person my hair might stand out more than it already does.
Well, table turning has been going on since Emma Harding-Britten got really into it herself when she was out in the States. We blame America, Diana, for everything. Spiritualism itself started in the United States of America, in the state of New York, and in a village there, Hydesville, and it was the Fox family who actually first heard these knockings and bangings and answered them. Other people had heard it, by the way, before them, but they were the first people to be prompted to try and make some kind of conversation, because Morse code had just been invented, and they decided on an alphabetic code, and by that means were able to communicate with this person who had been making all these rumpus and knocks and bangings, to find out that his name was Charles Rosner. He was a peddler, and he'd been murdered, and he was buried in their cellar, as well as was his tin box. Many years later, after lots of hoo-ha about that, a skeleton was found in this, and so was a tin box. So there. But yes, where were we? I was going off the, oh yes, the table turning. Emma Harding Britton went out to, well, Emma Harding as she was, went out to America with her mother because she was an opera singer, she was an actor, and she was also a journalist. Well, she was sent off by a newspaper. I think she must have been resting. You know, when there isn't a show, and she was sent by a newspaper to cover this mediumship that was suddenly going on in the States, and she was completely skeptical and thought, well, I'll go and have a look at this, and I'm going to write it up and have a good go at it. And anyway, she was hooked, and she developed her own mediumship. And one of the things that she writes about in her own autobiography, because she became Emma Harding Britton when she married a Dr. Britton, was table turning, and she was absolutely thrilled with that. And it's amazing, but it is not frightening, because the spirit operators only love us, and they can answer questions by moving the table. Oh, we've had wonderful experiences, like when they won't mind me saying, but there was a young couple who were attending our services, and they came to a special one that we put on for the Australian Broadcasting Company in 2008. And Kathy was actually doing her stint of table turning at that service. One part of the service was devoted to that. And the table was asked whether he would ever be a father. And it went right up to him and right into his kishkas, as we call them, his innards, as if them upstairs were examining through this sort of stethoscope of a table. And the answer was yes. Well, they didn't believe it, but then it turned out that they did go on to have not just one child, but two. So there you see. So it's not frightening. It's amazing. And I will ask Kathy to do that with me. I don't know quite how we'll set it up. We'll be in the distance waving to you, and the table will be going round, I'm sure. It takes a while. It takes a few minutes to sort of warm up the atmosphere and so on, but we'll have a good go of it. Meanwhile, if you want to see it, of course, I'm being prompted now by them upstairs. It's on YouTube. Just put in Kathy Gibb-de, or put in Lyn Gibb-de YouTube channel, and you will find Kathy put table turning. I think we called it table turning, and you will see the actual video that was made, the recording that was made by the ABC. There. Are there any more on Facebook?
Peter Martin just says much love and thank you, with love, light and happiness. God bless.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you. I'll be getting back to Facebook. Alan, we're 58.50. It seems to be about an hour, doesn't it, that we have together? I'll carry on for a bit. Now, where are we? Trance healing gives me peace of mind when I did it. Non-trance, I felt too much pain and trouble with the patient. Oh, right. Yes. Well, what you have to do when you give healing, spiritual healing, you must protect yourself before you start, and then you will be protected from psychically picking up their aches and pains and problems. You have to protect yourself against that, and before you actually deliver the healing. So trance healing, of course, it just means that you're in that more elevated state of mind anyway, and it means that the operators in spirit will actually protect you as well. But if you're doing lower level healing, then where you're basically fully conscious, but of course your vibration is raised, then you must actually make an affirmation that everything you do is only for good, and to ask them to protect you, to give you a covering so that you will not pick up any of the aches and pains of the person to whom you are delivering the healing on their behalf. And the other thing about that is that it actually gets in the way of what you're actually wanting to do. So I would suggest that you could give healing without being in trance, as long as you make sure that your preparations are good and that you make sure that you ask for protection from all ills and from picking up the problems that the patient has. The healers often have a problem when they're going into hospitals and doctors' waiting rooms and so on, and you have to ask for protection. So get used to asking for protection so that you don't get assailed by all the sickness and pain that's going on around you. Because the other word for medium is sensitive, and sensitive is what you are. And of course, you make yourself more sensitive by developing that sensitivity. So you don't stand much chance if you don't actually utilize that ability to actually say, please look after me, please protect me, because I don't want to pick up all the aches and pains that are around me at the moment there. So I hope that helps. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Isn't that awful? And my family were Dutch. Tjitsa. Sorry. Perhaps you will let me know now. Melanie, what did Abraham? I think I would like to swerve that one, Melanie. I think that channeling is not something that that is really relevant to spiritualism. Why? Because it doesn't prove life after death. You know, where there's no proof, you need to have name, rank and number of the guides, okay? And you know, I've heard of people channeling alien beings, for instance, you know, Starfleet commanders and so on. I'm sorry, it leaves me a bit cold. I'm not into that at all. If, you know, whatever people want to, as long as it's not anything wicked. But channelers, no. Trance mediumship, that's something else. If it's you know, we know when things are right, don't we? What I'd say is this, that if something makes you wonder whether it's genuine or not in that way, dismiss it. Oh wow, yes, Karen. Yeah, yes. Well, we'll do our best. We've had all sorts of things. We've had all sorts of things jumping around here. I can tell you, we have a lovely elephant table that's known to rock when we've tried that one. We have a small table, and that does very well. We've used that in many a circle. And Reverend Denise Sherpa, right, Reverend Denise Sherpa down there, who runs Swans in Worthing, she's been party to that, and so have many people that we've actually done table turning in circles with, and it's just great fun. And we've got trumpets here, as I mentioned before. The worst thing was the old-fashioned gramophone. Kathy bought me an old-fashioned gramophone, you know, where those great big trumpets like his Master's Voice ones. And the trumpet used to fly off all the time. And I used to pack it down with blue tack. Then I pasted it around. Didn't matter what we did with it, it flew off. So we dispatched it to trumpet heaven because it was just really too much. It was huge. And it would just be bashing itself on the... Oh, thank you, Kathy. My trusty assistant here has just brought me this. This is a seance room trumpet. This trumpet was gifted to us by Sue Willison, who was then General Secretary of the International Spiritualist Federation. And this was made, it's a facsimile of the trumpet that Helen Duncan, that much maligned medium, who was imprisoned, for mediumship, used to use, and it's a facsimile of her trumpet. This trumpet has been used in many demonstrations, and it's in circles here. It's been marvelous. We've seen this trumpet become transparent. We've seen it have smoke coming out of it, all sorts. We've seen it roll about for no reason, and we've seen it still when it's been laid on a table that has been turning. This trumpet, which as you see is very curved, has remained still and static on that table as it's moved around. Absolutely amazing. So there you are. So I'm grateful to Kathy for showing this for you, for deciding that I should show it to you. And of course there are loads of other artifacts here in this room. We live amongst it, basically. We live amongst it. But I tell you what, I would never be without my little wooden cross. There you are. There, look at that. Wow, look at the light on that. There's no extra light here. And that is a little cross that has been with me all the way. And it has healing in it. And it's been in many a machine with me that's been examining me innards. And that is a cross. I have a few of them that I put healing in and I sent off to people. If you'd like one, I can let you know. If you message me on Facebook, I can let you know the details. There, look at that. That's amazing. It's actually wood. You can't see that, but it's just a little wooden cross and you can hold it, you see, and it makes you feel better. There. So. Okay. Melanie, so if it's genuine, I'd say yes, Leah. Oh yeah. Yeah, so I mean, when push comes to shove, you have to just take the sort of rational way out, really. Play the skeptic game. Well, I think we probably come to the end of our session today, unless you want to see me, drinking even more water. Basically, I guess it's a combination of ordinary dry-throatedness after chatting on for so long, and a little bit about psychic stuff too, and telling you about things. Well, I think that we're just about there. I don't think I can see any more questions. So I hope that you've enjoyed today, and you've heard a little bit more about things that are of interest to us. Certainly interest me. And I'll be back again, perhaps tomorrow, because if people like this, then I don't see why I shouldn't occupy myself for an hour. Kathy's come in.
And Tammy just said, remember that sitting with you. She remembers, Tammy.
Oh, Tammy remembers a sitting with me. The problem with sittings is that the medium concerned doesn't, as Kathy says, doesn't always remember, rarely remembers, which is a bit infuriating for the sitter, who may want to discuss some matter further in the future, when it's all gone from the medium's mind, of course, because one thing we're trained to do as mediums, and one thing I train mediums to do, is to forget everything. So you get a message from somebody through you, somebody here, you give that message and then forget it, because you can't keep everybody's messages, can you? Can you imagine it? So anyway, I'll say God bless you. I must remember to keep looking at the camera and not up at the screen, because there's nothing on the screen except myself. And I could look to the right and see the comments there, but I think hopefully I've answered a few people's questions, and I look forward to speaking with you again tomorrow, maybe around the same time if that's convenient for people, I don't know. And perhaps you sort of, you know, if you have friends, you could tell them that there's this going on, because it's always nice to have more people. And, you know, the more we can spread the word, the better it is for the world, really, isn't it? You know.
And Guy Taylor says you look disgustingly well, then.
Oh, I say, disgustingly well. Well, that's all credit to Kathy, who is my personal living healer. The only reason I married her. Who knew? But, you know, Kathy sat in circle with me for 17 years. That is forbearance and fortitude beyond.
Never mind living with you for 36.
I don't know whether you heard that, but I think she's moaning something about 36 years in the background. But however, you know, I do feel that all the healing that I've received, not basically from Kathy, but I know that I've received so much absent healing that it's actually seen me through an awful lot of trauma, and so for which I thank everybody. I can actually feel the good wishes. So I'll say God bless to you, and I will keep you all in my prayers, and I look forward to speaking with you again tomorrow and answering some more questions and talking a bit more about things that have gone on in my life when it comes to mediumship and healing, of course, not anything else. So we don't need to know all the rest of it. So I'll say God bless you, and work out how many years of what? How many years of what, Melanie? Please explain how many years of. Can you?
How old you are?
How old I am? How many years? How many years Kathy has sat in circle was 17, and how many years putting up with me? 36.
But you in circle, how many years mediumship?
How many years of mediumship? I started my mediumship journey in, oh yeah, you two together, circle and living. Yeah, we've been together 36 years.
We still remember the old songs.
And we do sometimes sing old songs together to cheer ourselves up, like we did this morning. Sparky's Magic Piano we did this morning, which some people have been much too young to know.
The Beatles.
And all the Beatles selection we do. We also do some 50 selections, and I won't talk about anything earlier than that. So there you go. Revelations. What we get up to.
In the Bible.
Oh, and the Bible, yes, and reading the Bible. We do that. So I say God bless you, and farewell until tomorrow. God bless you.